Welcome to 5 Minutes with Errol Musk for the channel Dad of the Genius. We're discussing childhood years of Errol, part 3. Errol, you gave a background about your parents and the situation that was quite difficult after the World War. So it was not easy always if your parents are very stressed with you have to deal with things on your own. So what kind of things that you experienced that was difficult to overcome during your childhood years?
Well, much like Elon, I could not see the point of being poor, and everybody seemed to accept poor, that you were poor, and I couldn't imagine living a life of poverty. Somehow, I won't say I put it in like I imagined forward, Looking back, I would say, I saw opportunity everywhere, and I proved that because, it took me literally 2 years after university. I got scholarships to go to university, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to go to university, and so did my brother, and he's a doctor, and it took me 2 years after university to accomplish everything more than adults that I knew. Even Maye's parents. It took me like 2 or 3 years. They were better off people, Maye's parents, but it took me 2.5 years to completely exceed anything that they were doing.
You were also just 11 years in school, because after the picture that you draw as in part 2 on the wall, the teachers put you in grade 2. So after 11 years you finished school.
Yeah, it's very young.
Yeah. So, and then I think you married when you were 22.
No, I was 24.
24. Okay, so by 24, since being in school till 24, you were able to afford a honeymoon basically around the world.
No, in Europe.
In Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you achieved so much from after
from
school.
From zero to hero.
Okay, so if you think back about overcoming difficult things, how did you deal with difficulties? What was the way that you chose to get over?
I think it's part of your genetics. It's part of your genetics. I think you take my father for example. He was born. He lived his youth in the 30s, when people in this country were really poor, and the Great Depression and all that kind of stuff. He was very clever. He had no opportunities at all. And eventually, when the war started, he went in as the first day, to get this shilling a day that they got paid if they went into the army. And he immediately was taken into the Cryptanalyst section, the coding and military intelligence, and he spent the entire year in military intelligence, entire 6 years in military intelligence, and they never wore insignia, and they never wore any badges or anything like that. They were dressed as petrol jockeys, so that if they were ever captured, they were not known to be cryptanalysts. And so he, as Elon has said also on a few occasions, my father could do the Sunday Times crossword in 10 minutes, and if he was bothered to send that in, he won the £5 or whatever it was in those days several times. So he would have been a programmer today. But in fact, his life was hell after the war. Coming back here, this was a country that was very sympathetic to the Nazis, and people who went to war against them were not given jobs here after the war in the late 40s and early 50s. They were like sidelined, So my father had a terrible time like that as a result of that, and terrible frustration. So it's very unfortunate,
Yeah, so he didn't really.
And overcoming things, trying to overcome that situation that I said, if this is what life's like, I don't want to live, who wants to live like that?
Yeah.
So, but luckily that visit to England with my mother for a couple of years, that really opened my eyes a lot, because of the kindness that was shown to children in England compared to the way children were treated in South Africa, which was very rough here, but very kind in England. I can never forget it, you know, how kind they were to children in England.
What's the difference between you and your brother?
6 years.
6 years. And what role did your brother play in your life?
Well, he was my little brother, so he was quite a lot younger than me, and so didn't play. Later on in life, you know, we were closer together. We put up a bush lodge together and all that sort of stuff. But as kids, he was much younger than me, and he was a very well liked child, very good looking child, and he was very well liked. And well, you know, there's so many things I can say. Oh, what I would say about my brother is, first of all, his two sons are the highest high school result kids in the history of South Africa. So no kids have ever exceeded his two boys' achievements at school in South Africa.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And then don't play Trivial Pursuits against my brother. And especially not for money, because you will not have a house afterwards. I'm warning. That's a warning. Don't play Trivial Pursuit with my brother. Yeah, anyway.
You know, Errol, so when you was going to school and you went on your own, doing things on your own, were you lonely?
No, I had lots of friends, lots and lots of friends.
But when you cycled to school, and your parents were busy with their own things.
Yeah, my parents not involved themselves in school affairs. My problem was my parents couldn't afford the £1 a quarter, which was only, you know, like £1. It was like $2 a quarter for education, and it was a lot of money in those days. You know, to multiply it by about 200 or something. But they couldn't afford it, so it was quite difficult to be the number one pupil in the number one class at school and all that sort of thing, and have parents, and your parents couldn't pay or buy you the correct uniform and all that sort of stuff, and pay the fees. You know, it was difficult.
So, did you make at school or in high school maybe certain objectives or lists of things that you want to achieve, or when did it start to happen that you have an idea that you want to become an engineer?
Well, I had my greatest ability was in art, fine art. So the art department at the school, which was very good, they wanted me to go to Italy and study fine art, portraiture, and I was very good. I was quite good at that, but I couldn't see how I could make a living at that. But I also completed. I matriculated with the highest sort of math score in South African school history at the time. I received 120%, which means they gave you 2 papers with 6 questions on each paper. So I answered all 6 questions. You only had to answer 5. The result was I got 120%. So they phoned me to tell me that I have 120% for math. So I was quite good at math, but I'm terrible at music and many other things. You know? I mean, I'm like a caveman on a lot of stuff, and. But I was fortunate enough also at school to be, the girls kind of liked me, so I had a lot of girlfriends, you know, and so not only boys. I quite puzzled by it all. I knew very little about the whole, you know, boyfriend girlfriend thing. But I mean, I had all these girls, and
did your father give you advice on that? Or
my father?
Yeah.
Sometimes he would tell me that one's better than that one. You know, something like that, but very little. And but I had like when I was in my final high school year, I had this girlfriend. It was Jackie. She was the school's beauty. She was the beauty of the school. She was like super beautiful, and but somehow I didn't really I liked the idea, but I didn't want to go out with her all the time. So one day she in the break with all the kids around, she handed me all our photographs back. You know, called me out. I was always in the library, so they called me out from the library and gave me all her photographs and letters back. Said she started crying and everything, and I didn't know what to do. I turned around, and then suddenly somebody tapped me on the shoulder and turned around, and I got a fist straight in the face. and knocked me right out. And I was woken up under a tap with water running over and blood running down into the drain and everything from a much bigger guy had hit me. And so anyway, I asked the school not to they wanted to expel him, but I said, no, please, that's not, I don't want that.
So what happened?
I became friends with him. We became friends, and
was it on her behalf that he did it?
yeah, I think he did it, of course. And but another funny thing is that when I took Maye, who also went to my school, to her to the graduation, or prom. What do you call it? The prom, but the matric farewell, we call it. I was really in love with Maye, and I went with her to her prom. You know, she was 2 years behind me, and Jackie was also 2 years behind me, the pretty girl. She came up to us at the prom, let's say the matric farewell, and said in front of everybody, I mean, she could do that. She said, I can understand you dropping me. That's me, you know, dropping her, Jackie. And then she pointed at me and she said, but I can't understand you dropping me for her. So, but I think I knew better than Jackie, you know.
Errol, you really had an eye for fine art, or maybe
Yes.
for beauty in women as
Yes.
well. You once told me a very interesting incident about your art teacher that really wanted you to pursue this.
Oh yes, the art teacher wanted me to go to Italy.
Yes.
And I told him I'm not going to do it. So he threw a fit, you know, he went berserk. And I was the house captain and all sorts of things at school, and he was the house master for my particular house and all that sort of thing. And so it was difficult because he wouldn't speak to me. And he refused. In fact, we had his retirement at my home about 11 years later, or thereabouts, when he retired at my home, a big home, which is today the headquarters of the United Nations in the Southern Hemisphere. And he came and he looked at all my artwork. He still never spoke to me. He thought I was an idiot. He was probably right. You know? Anyway,
no, but maybe it's
that's
something...
true. I mean, if I mean, art is really something, you know.
Oh,
I mean,
but maybe it's something that can unfold now. Yeah. Okay, I just want Errol to share a bit of himself, as if I'm not the interviewer, and you can have a first-hand experience of who he is. Thank you very much, Errol. That's very interesting.